So this is going to be a second part of a three-part video that I'm taking. I did the Appalachian Trail through hike in 2023, February 27th to July 30th. And I just did a video talking about the gear that I finished with. Now I want to talk about the gear that I started with that then I ended up not needing because either I was transitioning from winter to summer or I just got a replacement for it. But it's still useful gear, not gear that I sent home because I just didn't need it. I took it and it didn't turn out to be as that I needed it like I thought it would. Okay, so let me flip this around. Start off here. So the pad for my Gossamer gear, this is the new pad, but my pack is actually so old that I started with this old pad. This is the pad that the packs used to come with, and then this is the pad that they have now. My pack started really smelling bad, and I thought it was because this was absorbing sweat and smelling, and so I sent this back home and I bought this one and I replaced it, and I think this is just a little bit better pad, but it really wasn't significant. The problem was the smell was getting in this, and my shoulders. And what I started doing was buying Febreze, a bottle of Febreze, when we would go into resupply, and I would spray that and let that dry, and that really helped a ton with the smell. But my pack probably in the end was the smelliest thing that I had, and it was really hard to manage the smell on that. So this pad was fine. It wasn't a problem, but I went ahead and replaced it for just a slight upgrade. Then I started with this cotton hat that I'd waxed so it was waterproof, and I loved it. This is, as a matter of fact, that's why I replaced it. This is the hat that I started with. I ended up throwing away because I ran into a tree and it busted my skull open and it bled all inside my hat. This was all full with blood. I never could clean it out where it didn't smell bad after that. I had to go basically a day without being able to clean my hat, and then when I did finally clean it, I got it where it was fairly good. I thought I washed it probably 3 or 4 times, hand washed it to try and get it clean, and it always just smelled bad after that, so I threw it away. But anyway, this is what the hat was. It's a replacement hat. I'll tell you one thing that I did, which I always do with my camping hats, is they usually come with a little button right here, and I always take that button off. I tell you, if I'd have had that button on when I hit that tree, I think it would have just been insanely painful with all the force being right there. But what happened was when I hit without that button being there, it kind of doesn't create a high pressure point in one spot. I started doing that because, one, I've had stuff land on top of my head, and with that button there, it's a lot more painful. But also, I hike in the Boundary Waters with a canoe that you portage, and when you put that canoe around and you want to set it down in your head because you want to adjust, move something around. That with that button up there, it's just incredibly painful. So anyway, whether you do that or not, I don't know. I like doing that, but this is a really nice. It's a waterproof. After you wax treat it, it's a waterproof hat. It's got the same light on it. Like I said, if I had it, that's not working. But if I had it to do over again, I would probably try and find a red light and a white light, put them side by side, so I have 2 lights, because the red lights are better for not disturbing people's vision inside shelters. This is my Z-Pack poncho, and I had it at the beginning and it was great. The problem is the poncho was what I was using to put over my pack and me, and when it started getting warmer, it was just too hot to wear a poncho that had to go over everything. And so that's when I said, well, I really need a pack cover and a pack cover and a raincoat instead of the poncho that does it all. Because once you put the poncho on over that, it gets brutally hot. You're like, I don't want my pack to get wet, but I don't care if I get wet, and you can't do that with the poncho. So I didn't. But in the winter, when all you want to do is put it over all of it, it worked great. I'm not unhappy with it. It's just it wasn't good for the latter half. As I said earlier, I started off with these thermals, and I would put them on when I would go to bed. And in my tent, what I would do is I would take everything off that I wore for the day, and I had a string that went across the top of my tent, kind of like a clothesline, and I would hang all my clothes up there. And then I would put this on, and I would put this on. This is my hoodie, wool hoodie. So these are both wool, and I would put them on, and then I would sleep in that. And this is super comfortable setup because your skin is covered with this nice wool, and you don't have any of the plastic feeling that you have from sleeping in the sleeping bag type stuff. And then this was my long sleeve. This is just this was a great shirt when it was winter. I would have this, and I would also have the t-shirt. So one of the shirts, I would just have one t-shirt and this shirt, but this was my long sleeve shirt. It's a wool shirt also. If you're not catching on, I'd recommend everything you can be in wool. If I could have found wool pants, I would be wearing wool pants too. Wool is it's a superior material for camping in, to keep you warm even when you're wet, and to knock down the smell. So I would definitely recommend that. But this was great. It worked really good. I started with this lip balm. And as I mentioned earlier, what I'm carrying at the end was just plain old Vaseline. And the reason is because this lip balm kind of has a different stuff mixed in it. And it's not that great for chafing in other areas of your body because it's got kind of tingly or stings a little bit. So the Vaseline's just more, I didn't want to carry both. I didn't want to carry Vaseline and this, and I could use the Vaseline on my lips, no problem. And even though this is better for your lips, the Vaseline would work, but the Vaseline would also work for chafing. And so I stopped carrying this in lieu of the Vaseline. Then I was carrying warmers. I would just carry one of these when I'd use it up. Then I'd buy another one for resupply, and that was great. But like I said, in the summer, you don't need that. I started off with this pair of pants, and a belt, which was great. But the pair of pants that I have now have a drawstring in them. So they're a lot like this, except they have a drawstring in them, and that it allows you to keep your pants up without a belt. So even if you buy a snug pants, after you wear the same pants and hike in them for 4 days, the waist just loosens up and gets baggy on you. So you really need either a belt or the drawstring. The drawstring to me is just a lot better than the belt, but the belt would work too. But I started with these pants, and then I transitioned to the other pants. I would have probably bought these again, except I couldn't find these at the outfitter when I finally needed, to buy another pair of pants, because the pants I had were just getting shredded. So anyway, but that's what I did. Then I showed you those glasses. Those glasses I got like at a Walgreens, the black frame ones. But these are the type of glasses that I started with. They aren't the exact ones because I actually misplaced the other ones that I had that I was doing. But I also put a bungee, a real small bungee cord that tied around it so it would hang around my neck. And the bungee was great because then I could stretch it around things, and just worked really good. But this is an example of the glasses that I actually started with. I also started with these glove liners, and it's kind of interesting. I started with two because I couldn't decide which one I'd like better, and I figured, well, I'll take both of them, I'll try them out, and the one that I don't like, I'll throw away. But I ended up loving both of them, and I actually ended up wearing both of them. I would put one on, and then I would put one on top of that when it was really cold. And I also had leather gloves that I brought that would would be my tough layer, exterior layer for that I waterproofed, and those would even go on the top of that. But I didn't warm up to the leather gloves. They caused more problems, I think, than they solved. So that'll be in my video, my final video, which will be stuff that I I won't, didn't think was such great equipment. But this, with my other pair of gloves, I would do that again. If it was, I could wear one. If they got soaked, I could switch the other one. If it was really cold and I need to wear both of them, I would. But those worked great. Then I had my buff, which worked really good when it was really cold. I like a buff. But for the summer, I didn't need it. Same with my beanie, worked great. But once summer hit, I didn't need that anymore. I started off with these darn tough extra, the heaviest socks they have that go up to your, up to your, above your calf, and great for winter. But once it started getting warmer, I just went to a lighter sock. And so I showed you the lighter sock that I ended up with. I also tried I had problems with blisters, so I tried some Injinji socks, which are the toe socks. And I don't know, they seemed to be okay, but I already had the blister, so it wasn't really a fair test of them. But by the time I was over the blisters, I couldn't tell that the Injinjis, and it's just one more thing you got to carry and you got to put on, and they're kind of a pain a little bit in that area. So I really ended up not needing them. And then I started off with some sleep socks, and that was great. I loved them in the winter. I had the sleep socks, and then I would put on these puffies, but when summer hit, I just didn't need the puffy socks or the sleep socks. I thought I would wear my extra pair of socks as sleep socks, but I really didn't. Once it was warm enough, I just really didn't need anything on my feet. And I have very sensitive feet to the cold, and once it got warm, it just wasn't a problem. Then I had these rain pants, and when it's cold, I think you need these. These are frog togs. They're a different type of frog tog than my top frog tog, so they're not matched. But I took these. I could wear these. I also ended up wearing these a lot when I would be at a place where I wanted to wash all my clothes, even my shorts, but they didn't have loaner clothes, and I would actually wear these, just wear them around to cover myself up while my clothes were washing. But in the end, when summer hit, I didn't really care if my pants got wet, because when you put these on, it's just too hot. You're just burning up. You can't put that on. So I ended up not needing these at the end. But they did at one point they were really nice, and I used them. Then I had my puffy, which this was one thing that I just really struggled with whether to send it back or not. And I finally did, and it was a good call because I hadn't used it probably for 2 weeks when I sent it back, and I never felt like I needed it. There were a couple of chilly mornings, but just, not enough to warrant carrying a puffy. So I'm glad I sent that back. Then I got my heavy raincoat. This was the raincoat that I used in the winter, and it worked great. It was a super great, but it's heavy. If I had to do it again, I'd just get a ruggedized version, but I got to find something lighter. So that worked really good. So I had that instead of the other one. And then these are my heavy puffy jacket. Now this puffy right here was just a in-tent puffy. And I might come out of the tent with it in the morning for a little bit, but I would definitely not wear it to any extent outside of my tent. This one I could wear hiking. I could wear when it was cold. I wouldn't have any problem wearing it out. It's a synthetic. It's not actual down, so it doesn't lose all of its. If it gets wet, it's not near as bad on the warmth capability of it. And then my puffy pants. And this combination, so I would save this for wearing out. This one I would wear to sleep in, and I would sleep in this one because this was always in my tent. Now, if it got really cold, I could do multiple combinations of things to really beef up my ability to stay warm. But I can't say enough good things about these puffy pants. These puffy pants were really comfortable to sleep in, really great. These I ended up sending them home because I just didn't need any more warm clothes, and I just wanted to lighten up as much as possible. And then finally, I started my hike with these Merrell boots, full leather, and they lasted fantastic. Now this is a new pair. This isn't the pair I actually, because I ended up throwing them away because I hiked, 1,200 miles in them, and they wore out. They didn't actually have any holes or anything in them, but I just felt like I wouldn't hike in them again. I'd just get a new pair, which is what I ended up doing. That's what these are. The only thing I will say about them that was a real negative was they have these. I started out with these insoles, and these insoles, they kind of look a little flimsy, but I didn't really think much about them. I actually tried some insoles that I didn't like before I went, some aftermarket insoles like the ones I ended up with there. They weren't like that, but they were insoles that I purchased that I tried, but I didn't like them. So I ended up starting my hike with these insoles, the ones that came with the boot. And what happens is this material, after you hike on it for, hundreds of miles, it flattens it. It completely flattens it. And the flattening of it isn't really, even though you do feel like you're not getting the cushion, that's not the big problem. The problem is when you flatten it, it spreads out. And when it spreads out, there's not enough room in your boot for it, so it curls up on the edges. And when it curls up, it starts creating these little creases. And everywhere where it would flatten out and curl up, I would get a blister. And so my heel did that. I wish I had an example to show you kind of what it looked like, but I threw them away. But anyway, ended up, I don't know, it was probably 6 weeks in, 7, 8 weeks in. It ended up being such a problem that I just had some hiker friends when they were going into town. I asked them to pick me up some Dr. Scholl's, and they did, and I replaced them, and that solved the problem. And so all the shoes that I had, I went with a pretty expensive insole replacement instead of going with the insoles that came with it. Now I don't know if the Ultras, they might have a better out of the box insole, but I ended up replacing them with the other ones just because I know those are specifically made to be great insoles, and I don't know about the quality of what comes with the boot. So, but these lasted. They made it the whole way. To put it in perspective, I went 1,200 miles on a pair of these, and there wasn't a hole, and the bottoms were still decent. The Ultra Lone Peaks, the last half of the trail, I went through 4 pair. That's how they kind of fell apart. And you can see, let me just show you what falling apart looks like. You see right here where it's starting to separate? That's what happened. This will just come apart. Oh, maybe you see it better here. See where it's starting to separate right here? That's what would happen. And I only have, might have 200 miles on these, probably 300 miles on these, but that's what happens. This starts just coming apart right here. And so, I was worried. Matter of fact, I was planning on replacing those before I summited Katahdin because I was worried that they would fall apart while I was on my last couple of days. But it turns out I couldn't get the boots in time, so I ended up just hiking with those, and those are the ones that I finished the hike with. Okay, I'm going to stop this video. That's video number 2. I'm going to do video number 3, which are things that I brought that really just weren't working for me, and I either sent them home or replaced them with something, but I wouldn't recommend them for a through hike. All this material that I've gone over in these first 2 videos, I would recommend. I thought there was a time and a place for them. So I'll move on to the second video. Thanks.